What's the worst case of rich kid syndrome you've seen? The rich guy I worked for homeschooled the little brats. I worked at his home office so would frequently do work in the residence portion. I walked into the school room to do some kind of repair one day. The 6-year-old kid looked at me, turned away and said in disgust, "I'm tired of all these workers coming in and disturbing me." Kind of funny, but also a little alarming at the same time. 100% heard that stuff from his or her parents. Or at least some sort of variation. My husband is like number 2 in his company. About 900 employees. Boss's 9-year-old daughter has been groomed to be a golfer. So much so that she no longer goes to school. She travels worldwide to competitions with a nanny and a tutor. Anyways, for some reason my husband is the only one entrusted to book her travel. Not remotely close to his actual job, but the boss signs the checks lol. On more than one occasion, she has called my husband at the last minute to change her flight, plus mom, nanny, and tutor, because she is craving a particular restaurant that is at a different airport than where she is scheduled to fly into. Or the time she called him to switch hotels because she didn't like the decor in the lobby. It was like a Four Seasons or some other high-end hotel. Her dad doesn't blink at the expense. Again, 9-year-old girl, and some of this happened more than a year ago. A few years back we had a few people over for drinks in our dorm. These were all incoming freshmen and they'd come for the night because we would select our new housemate among them. I was playing pool with one of them in the living room when he saw a girl doing dishes in the room across. He pleasantly exclaimed, "Ah, I see you guys have a cleaner. Excellent." It was our Vietnamese housemate who was doing a PhD, and as she didn't bother with selecting new folks, had decided now was as good a time as any to do her dishes. There was a story in one of the older threads of this, where some middle class guy said they invited their rich friend over for dinner. Afterwards, the rich friend was helping them clean up. He picked up the dirty dishes and just put them into the trash can. When they spoke up he had no idea why they were upset. He had never had to clean up for himself in his entire life. He'd always had a maid do it. He had no idea that dishes actually got washed and weren't just thrown away like everything else. A girl I knew once couldn't understand that my parents didn't own a boat. She literally said, "Well, you know, when you're on a boat in the summer." I was like, "No, I've only been on a ferry in the winter." And she was like, "No, not a yacht. Like, your dad's boat. Like, you know, a normal boat." My dad doesn't own a boat. No, I'm not talking about a huge boat. Just a small normal one. In her defense, depending on where you live, it's sometimes common for almost anyone to have a boat. I live in northern Minnesota. Fishing is the local pastime. I've seen people go out on the lakes in the crappiest beat up boat and just say screw it, a boat's a boat. Some people here are poor as heck, and you can be damn sure they have their boat ready for fishing opener, even if they are hand rowing the damn thing to the middle of the lake. Yeah, I was in LA. Nobody has a boat. A friend once said, "I don't like eating at my in-laws. They get groceries at Walmart." Worked with this kid who was a good kid, but completely disconnected from financial reality for most people. He'd just moved out west from another state and was trying to get on like a normal adult. He went to buy a new car and was shocked that they couldn't just bill his dad for it since they didn't know him. He ordered a bottle of wine at a restaurant and the sommelier said, "Certainly, sir." Then the sommelier whispered, "Just for your knowledge, sir, the bottle is $700. He looked straight at him and asked, "Is that a lot?" The sommelier honestly didn't know how to answer. Good kid, and he got a lot better, but he just didn't know. Once he casually told his mom he needed some help with bills and she deposited $20,000 into his account. I think the nice thing about this is that he was disconnected from the reality of it, rather than knowing it and having it become part of his personality. That's kind of true. After a while he got the concept of it mostly down, though he still had problems understanding the actual struggle. Once one of our CS reps, who gets paid hourly, was sick. She came into work anyway because she couldn't afford the time off. He was like, "But you have sick days, right? Go home." And she had to explain like 3 times that if she went home she didn't get paid, and if she didn't get paid she couldn't pay bills. She said, "I'm already a month behind on the power bill, I can't have them shutting it off." He goes, They can't do that. Can they? Like, he'd never even heard of that. We informed him that yes, they can. And do shut off your power if you don't pay for a while. I was dating somebody who I met whilst living in London. They had moved from America and were working in a business full time, so good wage. We went out to dinner one time and whilst we were paying, he turned and went, "I can't believe I have to pay for this." So I was like, haha, what? And he turned and was like, oh, well my parents gave me a debit card to their account and I'm waiting for the new one, which means I have to pay for my own meal. Meanwhile I was paying for my food out of my own pocket when I didn't have a lot of money because I didn't have a job at that moment. It just baffled me that a 25-year-old man was upset at the thought of spending his own money when he worked full-time at a good job. I used to go to high school with the daughter of the Polish ambassador in Australia. One day we were all talking in class about our homes and were talking about the new PS2 Slimline that came out. I'd been struggling to save up enough to contribute towards the console with my parents, and she said I would give you the one from my living room, but then I would have an odd number. She had 6. You should have asked for 2 then. Wish I thought of that back then. My friend crashed his dad's Porsche and was being driven to hospital. On the way they said they were worried he was going to lose his legs, so they'd go to the nearest public hospital. He replied, "I just wrote off a Porsche, take me to an effing private hospital." Myself. My father, who is poor and divorced from my mom, who is wealthy, bought us a trip to a wonderful beach town 1500 kilometers away, meaning he bought plane tickets, rented a car, rented a house, bought enough food to feed my brother, me, and my stepmother. He did all this while earning a crap salary because yeah, family time is that important to him. He probably worked 4 years for this trip. That was the last vacation trip he ever did in his life. Being the spoiled rich kid I was back then, the day before the trip I called him and told him I didn't want to go. He was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't feel like going." In my 15-year-old mind it was a no biggie. Now I realize I probably owe him something like $3,000 just because of that. He never asked me to pay him, and I never did. I feel bad to this day, but I only realized how much of a brat I was when I became an adult. Having a wealthy family doesn't automatically make you a brat. It's just that you don't see the value of money. Seems like everything is free. There is no respect for money because you don't need to earn it. And to change that, I had to become an adult and meet people who are not wealthy. At first I found it weird that their entire lives revolved around dealing with the cost of things. I would get mad at my friends when they could not go to X concert, X club, X bar because they didn't have the money. I couldn't understand. Took me a while to get it. Worked at a university with a lot of wealthy students from the UAE. One kid had a 6-figure sports car and would park in the handicap spot right outside the business school anytime he had class. He kept getting and paying the $200 fines. Finally the school had the head of student affairs talk to him, since sometimes he would take the last spot. He said he didn't mind paying the higher parking fee for a spot right up front instead of walking 5 minutes from the deck. She kept explaining it was a fine, not a parking fee, but he didn't seem to understand why it was a problem if he was willing to pay. Student advisor here for a university. You can pick the rich kids from a mile away. They will fail and try to con you into changing their grades, which we can't do, even if we wanted to, and get surprised when we tell them no. They become email warriors and we only respond by telling them to come and speak in person. They become very sheepish at that point. Quite often this is the first time in their life where they have to be accountable for their actions, and watching them come down to reality is a petty pleasure of mine. The most annoying part is they'll pass just enough to stay in the course, but fail so they can stay extra semesters on their parents' money. I work at a dog training and boarding facility. We have a younger client, a woman in her mid-20s, whose parents are insanely wealthy. They actually own most of the buildings on our block. Anyway, anything this young woman wants we know to not charge her, but rather to create an invoice of her items/services and send the bill to her parents. One day she was renewing her membership with us and selected our most expensive package of training classes and boarding options, and I forgot we don't bother her for the money. So when I told her the total was nearly $1,000, she looked at me not unkindly, but very surprised, and said with complete sincerity, "Does this cost money?" I didn't know what to say, so I just apologized and said I forgot we don't invoice her directly. She said, "Oh," and left. Not a mean person really, just kind of clueless to the financial reality most people face. Worked in a high school for diplomats' children. We had a discussion about what being poor meant. Poor is when you only have one servant. Poor is when your house staff have to go home at night because your house is too small to have servants' accommodation. Poor is when you can't afford to own your private jet and have to lease it. I worked in accommodation at a seaside hotel during the summer months at uni. Every year there was a rich family who would fly in on their helicopter. We would stand at the windows watching it land. The family in general was nice enough, nothing unusual to note. One time though, one of my co-workers ran up to me aghast and raging. She told me she had greeted the father and the son who were walking down the corridor towards the lobby. So, like any good member of staff, she held the door open with a smile for them both to pass through. The father thanked her but the son, following close behind, I think he was about 10 or 11 with a snooty demeanor, chided, "Why did you thank her? She's just a cleaning lady." I once had a mom ask if I could open up the back of our ambulance so her kid could see what was inside, since he wanted to be a firefighter. I'm a medic, not a firefighter. I agree, as long as he doesn't touch anything. Of course, the second the doors open, the kid hops in and goes straight for our expensive monitor. I tell him, "No, that's dangerous and could break," to which he starts screaming, "I don't care. My mom will buy it." And the mom says, "It's fine. Just let him play with it. If it breaks I'll replace it." I had to physically pick him up and carry him out of the ambulance since she didn't even try to control him. While this is happening we get paged out for a call and this woman suggests that she could pay double our hourly wage if we stay for a few more minutes so her little brat could explore/destroy more of our equipment. Get out of here with that crap, lady. You're willing to delay an ambulance so you won't have to deal with precious little Joey's tantrum? Unbelievable. Me and a friend of mine were going out somewhere, watch a movie or something, so we're at his home, and he says he needs to go get money. He opens a kitchen drawer with about 1,000 euros in it, grabs 100 and leaves. Turns out it's their money drawer, where every family member can just take money and the father just fills it up from time to time. Then he goes like, "You don't have a money drawer at home?" I worked as a bouncer at a high-end nightclub. The biggest a-hole of a rich kid, straight out of Malibu's Most Wanted, gets a VIP booth and bottle service, racks up a massive bill trying to act like a baller. His credit card gets denied, and he has to call his dad to come down at 1:30 AM because he can't order any more bottles. His dad comes down in his pajamas, obviously ashamed and furious at this kid. Ends up embarrassing the hell out of his kid in front of his whole group of friends. He takes the kid's keys and is about to leave when his kid makes some crappy comment and goes back in the club. The dad's about to walk away after he apologizes for his son. When we offer to drag him out the rough way, he smiles and accepts. That kid hit every door and step on the way out. Not the best story, but was one of the most satisfying experiences working at that club. Wow, you made it to the end. Thank you for watching, you precious little gem, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day, and as usual, remember to stay frosty.